License to Kill is proudly sponsored by Pest Patrol and Polaris Pest Group. Pest Patrol has been a long-standing supporter of the LTK community. Their continued commitment helps strengthen our mission, and we appreciate their support to keep our agents the best in the field. Polaris Pest Group is your ethical partner in growth. Looking to sell your business? Polaris is a values-driven private equity group dedicated to honoring your legacy and building upon your company's long-term aspirations. This episode is also supported by Swarm Pest Control Marketing. Swarm Pest Control Marketing is a digital marketing partner, and Swarm Mastermind helps leaders scale with confidence.
Hi, I'm Marcus, and welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges we face in our industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show.
Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the License to Kill show. Today, we've got a special one, a close friend of mine, Nick Godfroid here. He came to the Discord a while back through some connections, some friends we started making on social media, and then we found out he's a huge Warhammer 40k friend, Warhammer 40k nerd, and so we end up having our big competition here in the Houston area, and he was this close to coming, and at the last second, there was a kind of a diversion, but I did end up linking up with Nick just shortly afterwards. We got to hang out at the mall and do some good stuff. So really excited to have him here. He's an incredibly accomplished person. He's a BCE. He works at Rockwell Labs. So I want to give him a chance to kind of talk a little bit about where he came from and how he got to where he's at and what that journey's been like for him. So Nick, tell me a little bit about young Nick and how we became BCE Nick.
All right. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks for the warm welcome, dude. This is awesome. And then, of course, this is really cool, everything that you've been building so far, and I'm excited to be here and be on it. Now, starting young, I grew up idolizing the greatest environmentalist to ever hit TV, which is Steve Irwin. Right?
Yes. Love it.
He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. Gone too soon.
I love that his son's carrying that mantle, though. That's been awesome to watch.
Oh, it's spitting image. The fire is not gone. I love it. But then, so grew up, big Animal Planet kid. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio area, a little bit north of it in a place called Montgomery. And that is a solidly wooded area. A lot of creeks, a lot of trees. And then after school, a lot of my days would be just leaving after I get home from school, go out in the woods, play around for a bit, come back with a terrarium full of salamanders, bugs, anything that I could find that I thought was snakes, anything that I thought was cool to show my parents. And then as I grew up, hobbies change. Started playing a lot of hockey in high school, started doing some different things after I moved down to Texas, but natural interest. Oh wait, what's that for?
Oh, just Texas. Always celebrate for Texas. Anytime someone comes to Texas, it's
the greatest nation on earth.
That's right.
And then whenever I started getting into school, originally I was looking for a good job that had some natural science kind of tie to it. And so at first that was chemical engineering. And then calculus told me that engineering is not for me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I did listen. And then when I was looking for a natural science, I was looking to stay in school and then have a natural science degree, but one that had industry behind it, one that had a real career that could be achieved kind of straight out of school, not necessarily needing a grad degree.
Yes.
And entomology is the one. So if there was as big of an industry about reptile removal than there is about rodent removal and about bug removal, I'd probably be a herpetologist. But Nope.
I was going to say,
Science.
yes, so I was just about to point out, so I've talked to a couple of BCEs, and a few of them have admitted, that they were not the young kid that was turning over rocks and, and looking for bugs, but obviously, you're one of those. It's like it was just, right in the DNA, right from the jump, and you've got your pin board back there, and so I love that. So was that a project that you got to do during your formative years, like you're at school? Did you ever actually do the pin board stuff?
Well, when I was a kid, I did a pin board with a buddy of mine once, and we didn't realize that when you pin spiders, they just deflate. They don't have a hard exoskeleton like a lot of these bugs do, where if they dry, they'll keep their shape. So spiders, when you preserve them, typically you don't pin them, you put them in alcohol, unless they're really big like tarantulas, but then they'll still deflate.
There's a little pro tip for those of y'all who might be getting into
Exactly.
the collecting. Yeah.
If you're ever looking to collect or pin, then that's the way to do it. But no, this project was my junior year of college. There was a whole class that was about insect identification and classification, and then the final grade for it essentially was this pin board. And I don't have any of the alcohol preserved specimens there. I've got some bed bugs. I've got some roaches. I've got a bunch of wasps. Wasps are my jam. I love wasps. And but I did get a tick in alcohol. And then whenever you submitted this project, you turned in a workbook that had all of the insects or arachnids, what family they were, you had to identify them, and then also what location you found them in. And that tick I had gotten off of a pretty sensitive area of myself. So I wrote that down as like the location found. I don't know where I picked it up, but I did still get full credit for that, even though it was a somewhat lewd assignment.
We got a group kind of being formed here for the ACE, right? So we got a bunch of guys who are in LTK. We've got Miss Sylvia. I talked to her the other day. I'm actually supposed to have a more in-depth conversation with her about it on tomorrow. I was going to say on Friday, but that's literally tomorrow. Because she's been flying, doing the Purdue University thing in the Arizona and stuff. So she's been all over the place. But we're getting a group together, and they want to learn, and they want to get into it. And I know on the ACE side of things, it's a lot about identification. A lot of it is about, it's really kind of stepping away from the applicator side and more towards the, entomologist side, right? Like the actual knowledge of the families. And so is there like a little tip or trick or maybe something to help memorize all of those classifications, all those names? Do you have an acronym or like a mnemonic device that stuck with you after all these years?
So mnemonic devices, you're gonna need a good amount. Now I don't know about the ACE, but at least with the BCE, then it does get down to family level identification. So things that end in IDEA, like Adea, Cicadidae, or something like that.
Right.
And so I think the ACE has some, but for the most part, the beginning to learning classification is just learning the 33 orders. Yeah, I think it's orders. No, order is Hexapoda. 33.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Oh,
get them on the fly.
It is orders. Yep,
okay.
It's orders. 33 orders, because it's below.
That borderline sounds Masonic. I don't know.
Yeah. So the 33 orders, so that's the difference between a dragonfly and a grasshopper, essentially. And so there's only 33 of those in all of Insectus, in all of Hexapoda, which is the class. That's right, it is orders. It's class, order. Okay. And then the mnemonic devices, you have to come up with your own. And because someone can tell you like the kingdom phylum class order, like King Philip called our family genius stupid. That's for the macro stuff. But getting down into like, okay, I remember at the time they were called isopoda, and that was termites. But I was like, okay, iso, there's only one. That's just for termites, isopoda. Or it might have been Isoptera. It was Isoptera, not Isopoda. Isopoda is roly-polies. As you can see, there's a lot.
I was going to say, this is a very, it's a lot. It's a lot of information. It takes a lot to digest it. And even if you're on the back end of things, it's like you still always have to just drill this stuff regularly because it can become so. But honestly, that's one of the reasons why we're privileged to have access to so many entomologists on hand, because
it is really cool. I love
you
that.
need an entomologist for like each lane. You know what I mean? Like, because it branches off and becomes so dense so quickly. You know that it is nice to have people who are passionate about the various different types.
And of course, some people will remember certain classes and certain families better than others. Like I imagine we've got some lepidopterists in the entomology chat, people that like butterflies and moths the most. My jam is Hymenoptera, so that's wasps and bees and ants.
Right. Okay.
And so those and sawflies, which are kind of wasp. And so those are my jam. That's where like down to family, I can usually get them pretty well, like pompilids and stuff like that.
Where during your journey from bringing home a terrarium to walking across the stage with your diploma did you find that to be your jam?
Honestly, pretty much right away. Whenever it came time to start doing any kind of insect collecting, I always another thing. I'm a beekeeper. I was a part of the beekeeping club, or a founding member of the beekeeping club at Oklahoma State, where I went to school. And so that kind of started me down that path, because I do like studying eusocial and social insects, but the wasps that are solitary and the bees that are solitary are every bit as cool. And then the other social insect really is termites. And they weren't as interesting to me in college at the time. They've become more interesting to me now that that's where all the money is.
Right.
Yeah. And so I do that. It was on some collection trips that really I was like, wow, I'm getting a good variety of some really cool wasps and bees. Megachilidae is a family of leafcutter bee that have big jaws and bright blue abdomens. Those are really cool. And cuckoo wasps and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a little bit of fun around the danger,
Well, for any of the ladies listening, he is beekeeping age, but he's off the market now because my boy just recently got engaged. Got to give him some props and shout out for that. How awesome.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am going to marry an art teacher who is terrified of bugs.
The perfect match made in heaven.
Oh, it sure is, man.
You're the bug killer for her,
I feel so useful all the time. Like she'll send me a text anytime of day or night saying like, "There's a roach. I need you to come get it." Like, and I'll be Johnny on the spot.
My wife is deathly afraid of spiders, and it's like, so she says all the time, she's like, "I'm so glad I have a pest control guy on hand that." It's like, because she's like paralyzed and she won't move. She'll freak out. She doesn't want to like not look at it in case it moves anywhere. And I'll just walk up and like slap it with a flip flop or something. And
That's nothing.
Yeah, so but glad I can do my service.
My dad is pretty tough around most things, but two things get him pretty bad, and that's snakes and spiders that he thinks are either a brown recluse or knows it's a black widow, and he'll tell me to come take care of black widows. And this is bug abuse, but I like to flick black widows because they go and they kind of pop and go everywhere. And
okay. So you like to live life on the edge of danger a little bit. I would not do that. I would not get my skin that close to a
they're so weak. The reason that they need such strong venom is because they're not even very good at walking. They don't have really any muscle compared to how much mass their body carries. Female black widows.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why they have such a powerful venom. And also, nobody gets hurt by black widows anymore. You know why?
Why is that?
We don't have outhouses anymore. That's where people would get really hurt by black widows, essentially, is because they bite guys on the genitals. And that's where there's thin skin, high blood flow, that tiny, tiny bit of venom is able to make its way through not much skin, doesn't get lost in some flesh tissue, and then it can make its way to the heart, the lungs, and some central nervous system areas, and then that tiny bit of venom can kill.
Where did you find that out? What was that a part of your college course, or did you just deep dive and you figured that out reading some articles or something? Like, where did you get that information? That's awesome.
I think I had that information since I was in like high school or something, from a book that just had like a bunch. It was called The Bathroom Reader. It was meant to be like a book that you just set on a toilet and it's full of weird facts.
Yes.
To entertain someone.
Back before people doom scrolled, you just read the back of the shampoo bottle.
Exactly. Back when bringing your phone into go number 2 was considered gross and not just what everybody did.
Do you remember in rich houses they had the landline attached to the wall? People used to be like, who would, sit on the toilet and talk on the phone?
Exactly. So the books from back in those days gave me that little factoid. And then my career, I'm very thankful that those little factoids that I've been able to hold on to have come in handy a couple times. Not necessarily knowing about outhouses and brown and black widows, but then being able to retain some somewhat niche knowledge. That's one of the things that's really cool about the pest control industry, is that knowledge that might seem somewhat niche about a certain insect species or about a certain pest infestation, like conducive condition, like what can also cause forward flies other than just rotting food in a drain. Well, they can also come from like a broken septic line underground. And pest control is a place where one of these days that information is going to serve you well, because you'll come across it.
To me, I see that as like that's where the passion bleeds through. Right, where you have those little factoids that kind of just stick with you. Like you said, maybe it's something you pull up in a fun conversation, or maybe you're out in the field and it just snaps, like you said. You're like, oh, there's a broken line here. I just know there is because you're seeing the symptoms. And, I think a lot of people kind of, especially, I don't know about you, or the company that you've done trainings at or whatever, but industry is full of a lot of very dry and boring and monotone and stale trainings, and there's a lot of information. It's very dense, so it's very easy for it to just kind of rattle off on and on and on. And so I feel like when you meet people who, like yourself, like Mississippi, people who are driven by that passion, they have these little factoids they keep in their back pocket, and they're just able to connect, these disparate points together and kind of string them together to create an actual, fun story, a fun narrative. That's, to me, that's when I see, the excitement come out. That's when I see the smiles pop up. And that's when I see, the joy of the industry actually kind of show its face. That it's not all just, it just kind of humdrum. It doesn't have to be that way. There is so much coolness. There's so many cool insects and behaviors and science facts. We've learned so much in modern medicine by getting out there and observing the plants and the flora, the fauna, and the insects, and getting a lot from the insects. So, man, I appreciate you for carrying that with you on your shoulder with a big smile.
And that's also another way that, like, for on the service side, which, like, you and so many people in this Discord is, on that service side, having that smile, those factoids, and then also that interest and that passion, like you said, that's what evolves you to your customer from being the guy that takes a milky white fluid, puts it in water, and then sprays that around my house. And then you become, like, kind of a fun expert to converse with about this issue that they're having. And then I'd always made it so that I felt like customers would feel like, I'm not just afflicted by this horrible thing. I just happen to be in the way of what these fire ants were going to do anyway, and he knows how to take care of this problem in a way that affects me the least.
Yep.
And that's also where you'll evolve yourself from other pest control operators in the area, essentially.
Hey, being called the bug guy, that could be a compliment, I mean, it can be a reflection of how passionate you are about it. So tell me a little bit about that experience. Sounds like you had some real stories, some face-to-face time with some customers. So tell me a little bit about that time you spent maybe working at a company doing, field applications, and what that looked like exiting out of college, or did you do it before college?
So in college, my junior year, I had an internship through Orkin, who was acquiring a company in Oklahoma. The guy who sold his company in Oklahoma was an Oklahoma State alumni, and then he came to the school. He made a donation to Oklahoma State's entomology department with some of the tax write-off money from the sale. And then he had a lunch. He asked all the professors, like, do you have any students interested in pest control? And they're like, yeah, we got one. And then I was pointed his way. So I did end up doing a good amount of technician work before I graduated, but it just from a summer, and it wasn't supposed to be a technician work internship. It was supposed to be observation only, but the area flooded and they got really backlogged, so they got me licensed.
They said take this B&G, help.
Yeah, exactly. They said, here's some equipment, here's a truck. I know that you're not an employee, but help. And that was a great experience. I graduated May of 2020, so right when COVID hit. So I didn't really graduate. I found out through a PowerPoint like 6 months later.
I'm sorry.
And don't be.
I mean, congratulations on it, but I'm sorry that you're walking across the stage got taken away.
Yeah. It looked hot. It looked hot and boring anyway. But I had jobs still available. Whenever COVID hit, a lot of people that were graduating with me that had jobs lined up got those pulled because COVID was hitting. Not pest control. Pest control is an immortal industry.
Yes.
And so, yes. So I imagine. And were you in the industry at the time in 2020?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for 11 years, and I've actually gotten a chance. I've come to learn it's recession proof. It is disaster proof. I mean, it doesn't matter what's going on with the economy. It doesn't matter what's going on in foreign politics or any policies. The bugs are invading your house. The rats are invading your house. You're going to do something about it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're operating a major food plant, it doesn't matter. You can't have contaminations. I mean, these things just... I think it was like 14 hours after the lockdown happened and they, all the non-essential workers, and it was like 14 hours later pest control was put on the essential worker list. I mean, but that was a beautiful thing, coming from my side of the, because a lot of people became, paycheck insecure. It wasn't sure, hey, am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to keep working? And all of COVID, my life never changed. It never slowed down. I kept going to work every single day. In fact, on my end of things, it was actually a little bit nicer because there wasn't as much traffic. So, because I live in a major metropolitan.
Much less traffic. It was a great time to drive for work.
Yes.
And so after COVID started, I graduated and then ended up working as an entomologist and specialty technician. My route for a day would be like the third callback. All of the other technicians. Right. So basically, we don't know what's going on. This is our last ditch effort. We'll send you, and then be able to kind of turn that around, maybe identify something that hadn't been seen before, and fix that problem. And then that was with a company down in Dallas. And then one of the training days, they had a chemical rep, like a rep for one of the products that we used, a bait product, that came and gave a talk. And I remember watching them give this talk, and I was like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want that job. And then so then it was not a direct transfer over. After that, I went back. So I had my internship through Orkin, and then I was looking to move on. I looked at getting into the supply side, but supply side, things move slowly in terms of people moving around. They do move, but they move slowly, and I was looking for something quicker. So I reached back out to Orkin, and they had gotten kind of realigned after COVID and were back on a growth path. And then they had a branch with a service management opportunity right down the road from where I was living. So then for the next 2.5 years, I was a service manager for Orkin. And went from 8 technicians to 14, and then that was a absolutely fantastic time. I loved my team. I got to see all the ins and outs of running a branch as well. I had a great branch manager pretty much the whole time before he moved on shortly before I left. And so he showed me what it looks like to run a pest control branch. And that's one thing that I'm very thankful for in my current role on the supply side industry, that the end users that I'm talking to, I'm able to understand where they might feel like they're in tight spots and
Yes.
maybe give them some advice or something around there.
So what do you feel like you took from that time regarding like leading a team of technicians? Right, a lot of your everyday techs are not going to be as educated as you are. They may not be as passionate. I think that's one of the things
Mhm.
with LTK License to Kill we're really trying to do is drum up that excitement and drum up that passion. But of course, a lot of people just show up to their job, they clock in, they collect a paycheck. What was that like? What was a key takeaway that you really felt helped you during that time? Especially, I mean, you had a lot of growth. It's 8 to 14. I mean, you basically doubled the size of your team.
Yeah, and well, I'd say the biggest takeaway would be the biggest takeaway now, since I was the service manager, my metrics were really around customer retention, employee retention, and then of course like approval rates and metric or somewhat sales metrics, but those were heavily on the branch manager as well. But then like cancel rates, callback rates, and employee retention as well. So, and making sure that we were well supplied and had the right tools and equipment. And so my job of being like making the operation smooth made me really appreciate whenever you find either a technician or an employee, or whenever I have now an AC guy come to help me out who is passionate. There are so many people who are passionate. Maybe they don't have access to the resources
Yeah.
that we've got like through this Discord. They don't know that there's this much information at their fingertips. And
Right.
it's just a matter of getting them connected to the right resources, not just sitting them in front of a 10-hour eyes glaze over how to calibrate a bucket fill training.
Right. Right.
That's not going to make the best technician who's going to grow your company and their own wealth by a lot. It's
Right.
the person who is excited to learn how to be the expert in their route area, in their field. They're trying to learn how to be the expert in that and then try to apply it. That gives me so much appreciation. I had my water heater explode 2 days ago,
Oof.
and the plumber that I knew that my mom recently nearby had done the same thing, or had replaced a water heater. She had a plumber that she had a great experience with. He he came over to me, and I loved list. I asked every question I could about every bend and every pipe, and he was so excited to tell me about it, and I had so much confidence in him. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. My takeaway from the service side is that there's a lot of passion, and all you have
Yes.
to do is find the right place to put it.
Man, I love that because, we're such a small industry. We're such a niche. I mean, when you think about, I think there was, I looked up at one time, it was like 100,000 pest control workers nationwide. That includes like Alaska, Hawaii, I mean, all of it, right? And that serves 400 million people. And, finding that needle in the haystack is a lot harder when your haystack is much smaller too, right? But at the same time, I think it makes those who are passionate stand out that much more, right? So if you do see that little flicker of silver, if that pile is a little smaller, it's a little easier to kind of pick that person up, pluck them, and say, hey, let's get you some resources. Hey, let's pay a little extra attention to you, and get you, up and going where you should be going. So talking about that a little bit, um, what are your thoughts on pathway to ownership or pathway to
Ooh.
management? I talked recently with Christopher Hayes. He's an entomologist over at North Carolina, and he put together a program where it's like onboarding a program where you can earn your technician credentials while you're in class, so that way when you get out, you already have the credentials necessary to jump into the field, possibly from a tech position, but obviously with with kind of sights to be an owner operator,
Certified.
right? And so I think in this current day with so many people having college debt, the over credentialization of like every industry to the point where I think I was talking to a surgeon, an eye surgeon, earlier today, and she was saying that they're retiring and they're closing down their business and selling the building because overhead costs have gotten way too high, and just they've had a 25-year run, but keeping up with all of the credentials, certifications, and everything, and the expenses behind the insurance, it's just gotten so high. And I think a lot of people don't realize that pest control is an industry with good margins, without excessive barriers to entry, and that a technician who is passionate can be plucked out and put on a 5 or 10 year track plan to become an owner. So what are your thoughts, having someone coming out from the academic side but also with a little bit of field experience as well?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting topic, kind of that pathway to heightened career points over, like, everybody's going to everybody in the industry a lot of times will start at a technician spot, and then like how do you grow and evolve from there? I was very blessed to find my way into the industry as an aside from higher education. Now, like, through scholarships out of high school and stuff like that, I was able to get a degree, and that did allow for some, I don't want to say step skipping, but more, I came in from a side angle into service management, because service management has a little bit more technical expertise necessary. But even as a service manager, even as service management, I needed to learn how to be a technician as well. Like, that's its own field. Now, in terms of our field being less over credentialed, I agree. For instance, in order for me to really get established in the industry, right now I'm the technical specialist for Rockwell Labs, so I'm trusted with a lot of like kind of technical expertise and information, and I just have a bachelor's degree. It's not you don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to go to school for even 6 years to get a master's.
Right.
Actually, you don't even need to necessarily go to a higher education form, like you mentioned with these 5-year and 10-year plans for into that owner operatorship.
Right.
One thing that's great about this industry is that it is expertise based. So if you gain that expertise quicker than your peers, then you can absolutely have more opportunity to advance quicker than your peers. And then licensing is a way to do that. So like pursuing your technician's license, pursuing your certified applicator license. Once you have your certified applicator license, then you're a very integral part of a bigger company. But you do have the ability, should you see a niche in the market in your area, should you have an idea for how you would want to run a company differently, you have an opportunity through licensure to become the owner operator of your own operation quickly too. The quickest turnaround I've seen was a technician that started working for me. If you have a good manager, they will help you get your kind of like next level of license and then use you with that licensure, which is good. You don't need, it's not just a constant turnover, like, oh, I get my technician up in licensure, he leaves. No, but that does make it so that you will have more options if you get your licensure up. And so my recommendation to anybody who wants to become an owner and an operator is really just first focus on getting your certified applicator license to be A, of greater use to the company that you're in right now, and then B, that's what opens up the door to running your own, to owning and operating your own thing. Small business loans are super easy to get for pest control companies because it's a known quantity that if you run a solid route, you will be profitable in as few as 3 years.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you really touched on some of those points because like you said, it doesn't take away from the current person who's helping you to elevate up. And if you're aspirational, you're trying to, earn more income, you're trying to climb the ladder, those are quick and actionable things that you can do to make those advances in your life. Like you said, it really kind of drives on passion. And so, the nice thing is it doesn't require a scholarship and 4 years of your time. You can take the in-between times, you can self-driven, study, and you can become an expert recognized either in your own company or just kind of recognized in your own little market. And like you said, if you see a better way that it can be done, that's the beautiful thing about this industry, is it is fast to evolve, right? Because anybody who sees a better way that can do it can get to that decision making relatively easy. And I think that's not spoken about enough. I think if that messaging was articulated well and presented to 18-year-olds, graduating from high school and freshly, you know what I mean? Because there's so many people who are looking at the university track path and going, I don't know if this is fit for me, but I don't want to not have a trade or not have a impressive resume that allows me to do something with it, right? So for me, one of the little small tips and tricks I like to give to technicians out there who may be feeling that fire, who may be feeling a little bit of energy to take it upon themselves to become studied. Like you said, if you can surpass your peers, right? What is the whole thing? It's like, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the guy to the next to you, right?
The guy next to you, absolutely.
So in some sense, like, one of my favorite little tips and tricks is to tell technicians to grab whatever chemicals they're using in their truck, in their toolbox, and get on Google Scholars and start Googling the active ingredients. Right, that you should know your chemical. This is free. It's right at the end of your fingertips. There's no barrier. You can do that in between stops. If you ever sat there and you're going, man, I use this product all day long and I don't really even know how it works. That's the moment you should be going, I need to Google this.
And then knowing active ingredients is a great idea, because then when new products that you're not familiar, or even if they're not new to the market, but products that you haven't seen before,
yes,
when they're used or a previous company was using them, or if you're dealing with any kind of toxicology problem with a customer or anything like that, knowing the active ingredient means that you already know a bit more about the product. Understanding, like, I used Avert first. That was my first abamectin product that I used, was Avert DF, the dry flowable. But understanding the kill time on that for roaches, once I started learning a little bit more about abamectin, how it was found, how it's produced now, how it's used a lot in protein baits. That
how it works on the insect,
entire cockroach bait lineup.
Yes.
And then also some ant baits as well, like advanced carpenter ant and stuff like that. Now, I did want to mention one thing. I did see a note from Matt, and so that note from Matt is asking about like, kind of the industry-wide efforts to improve our education through, like, knowing more about either niche information or knowing more about really important general information, like, mix rates, how to operate a power sprayer, or what treatments to do, and like what or to
calibrate that bucket, like you said earlier. That might be boring, but it's essential. You have to know how to do it.
And so Matt was wondering if the industry-wide efforts to increase technician training is going to lead to a higher dollar amount that we can charge, essentially. And overall, I do think yes, but maybe not on an industry-wide scale. One of the things that I did have to kind of wrestle with and think about was that, like, we have a blue-collar job, essentially, right? Yeah. But then electricians, plumbers, carpenters, those are jobs that do get more dollars per job than we do.
Right.
Now, we have a lot less liability and a lot less damage potential than they do. Now, I'm not saying that a bad pest control operator can't do damage. Of course they can. But a single misspray isn't probably going to cause
catastrophic
thousands
damage,
of dollars of water damage, whereas a single wrong wrong bolt on a main water line is going to cause tens of thousands of dollars. So that does make it so that plumbers have to have much stricter and much heavier licensing than we do. But at the same time, it does make it so that we have a lot more leeway in terms of how our expertise can lead us to a unique solution where we're dealing with something living. Plumbers aren't. Plumbers are dealing with a known quantity. This water pipe burst, this is how we're going to fix it, this is where. We're
Right.
dealing with a living thing that we're dealing with living things that are
Yes.
trying to compete with us essentially. And so I
Maybe it's
do
a
think
dual-edged
that-
sword then. Maybe you get, it's
Yeah.
faster to entry, but, that
Yes.
curve, or that upwards, is not as steep as it is in other trades, like HVAC and plumbing and such.
Now, so plumbers, like plumbing licensing, I got to learn a little bit about this while this guy was fixing my water heater yesterday. And so plumbing licensing and like apprenticeship through it is a lot stricter. I would say that like the plumber that comes to your house is kind of like it's probably about on the training level, maybe not training level, but testing level as a certified applicator. Or at least a technician, so above an apprentice license. And because of that, that's part of why I think that they can charge more. But that's why I was saying before, pursue higher licensure.
Yes.
That is going to be the most direct line for your career to go upward. That's something that helped me a lot moving into my current role, was getting my BCE in order to become a technical specialist. Whereas before, I was mainly on kind of a technical support, but sales role. And now I'm a lot less sales, a lot more technical, which is where I want to be. I like talking about bugs.
When I was talking to Andrew Sinavsky recently with Primatech Pest Control, we were kind of having this debate of, how do you increase wages in the industry, because, I think the median wage for pest control technicians is like $44,000. It is below the median wage nationally, certainly not near as high as some of the other trades, and so it was a good, fair discussion, because part of the question is, is it possible to even raise, compensation without raising the ticket price? How do you justify the increase in ticket price? And so kind of going back to Matt's question of, how do high tides raise all boats? Andrew's solution, if you will, for that was more regulation. That he actually believes that the stricter the regulation, kind of what you were alluding to, kind of necessitates that those prices go up. But see, I don't want to lose that low barrier to entry, because I think we're already struggling as it is to get people in at a good rate, and you don't want to kind of scare them away. But what are your thoughts? Is like how do we raise those high tides? And I'm not talking about jacking up pest control prices from like $100 a service to $1,000, the way that you would for an electrician or HVAC or something, or maybe even way beyond. I think my recent HVAC guy quoted me $25,000 to redo. We're not going to have ticket prices for the average residential service at that level. But is there anything that we can do to kind of address this problem? We've got to help to lift the bottom up, it feels like.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've actually been thinking about a little bit recently, because one of my friends who is still working in the industry, one of the technicians that I had while I was at Orkin, him and I have stayed in touch and been friends since, and he was talking about trying to increase, how much money he's taking home, even though he's doing a lot more independent work. Now, I think there's a couple answers that you'll get. One of them is like raise regulations, so then customers are one of the reasons that the price of pest control is kept somewhat lower is because it's not easy for somebody to get educated and then go be a plumber for their own house. Pest control is something where people are able to find resources. They have access to professional products. Whenever you're a pest control operator, you're really getting paid for your expertise. You're not just getting paid for the fact that you have access to the chemical, because a lot of times your customers could go on Amazon and buy Termidor kind of thing. Now, one way to kind of increase that is to sell more services. Now, that's something that I've run into as kind of a challenge for my technicians. We already have a customer on for mosquito and general pest. What else do we need to sell them? Their house is locked down and very pest secure right now. What else is there to sell and to increase revenue? So
you see a lot of
sales is
companies
one
getting
way.
into these, like, Terminex was doing like beam support jackers and like basement line. I mean, you see insulation. You see us starting to. You hear a lot of companies doing like driveway snow clearing and window washing. It sounds like a lot of companies are starting to try and get away from pest control, to try and make that sale. And I don't know if that's not. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think in some ways it's good, but. I still go back to that problem of if we can't keep the wages at least at pace. I mean, the economy is just getting super expensive, and it just is year over year. And if we can't keep it at least attractive enough, for entry level workers, like, this is going to be a problem. You know what I mean? Like, we already have a very small industry, and the harvest is way bigger than the workers. I mean, there's way more work out there that needs to be done than there are people to do the work. So, this is a pretty interesting topic because I don't see an easy cut-all solution.
I have a different answer than just sell more. That's not my answer to it. My idea behind how to increase, I'm going to say take-home pay, is really reducing how much effort you need to put into solving a pest problem. Now, as you and I both know, it's not about like the strength of the product you're using. It can be, but it's also how you use it, of course. How many callbacks do you need? One of the reasons that bed bugs are so, I guess, there's so many pest control companies, and there's so many pest control companies that don't do bed bugs. Even though bed bugs are a common occurrence, they're not just for people who live in rough conditions. They're for 5-star hotels too. There's business everywhere. Why doesn't every company do them? It's because of how much effort it takes and how thin your margins are going to be after you've gone back 3 or 4 times. So finding or developing protocols, testing your own protocols, and then developing methods to really get a pest problem solved in one shot.
So I've got like a two-pronged thing here. To me, a big part of the issue does go back to what we were saying a minute ago about the ease of moving into ownership, is that a lot of new companies race to the bottom of the barrel. Right? They want to get a customer base. Their first assumption is, well, I know how I'll do it. I'll just be $30 cheaper than everybody in my market. Bad choice. We have a very chronic problem. And because it's so easy to spin up a company, you see a lot of people racing to the bottom. And then the second part to that, I just lost it. Actually, sorry about that. I didn't mean to. Just kind of had a bit of a brain fart. But the inefficiencies. Dealing with inefficiencies. Using the technologies that are at hand, like it's the cell phone data, traps and monitoring cameras and these AI software and stuff. I know right now it feels bulky and cumbersome. You've got 3 or 4 different logins. The systems aren't talking. But I've been recently listening to a podcast called Pest Control Unlocked with Konstantin Schwartz. And he does it's awesome, I know, right? And he's got an accent too, but he's American. But he does this episode about the technician of 2030 and kind of the companies that we'll experience in the future, and how using smarter technology that's able to sync all of this stuff together, and trying to maximize the productivity. He was saying, like, if we had devices in the field, as opposed to just running like an exclusion tech, for instance, who's doing rodent trapping, as a additional portion of their exclusion. So they seal up the building, they put traps on the inside of the attic just to make sure that if there's any residual activity that got caught in there. The problem is you set up multiple follow-ups, and say you're running 10 concurrent, rodent programs at the same time. You've got a technician that has to spend all day long driving to a variety of different houses to check what's most likely going to be an empty trap, a trap that hasn't been triggered. And you're wasting a lot of gas, a lot of downtime, a lot of ticket opportunities where you could be servicing others. And so what he was saying is, the companies that figure this out the fastest and the most efficiently and are able to make their softwares connect, they'll be able to do 40% more revenue per technician because they're not wasting time. And to kind of critique the company that I've worked for 11 years, so I love my company. I'm not knocking them, but I spent a lot of time when we were at a large beverage manufacturing facility, literally just popping open tin cans and counting insects. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when I was spending, upwards of 8 to 10 hours a week on site at this place, 2 times a week, 4 hours a day, minimum, and I'm not actually doing that much pest control because I'm just literally walking around popping 900 plus tin cat stations. And it kind of did, dawn on me after, several months of this just very grueling, quite frankly, boring type of work, that you realize you're like, what, like, I spent all this time, counting, and I'm not actually doing application. I'm not actually sweeping down, the bed bugs or the spider webs. If I took this 4 hours and just did pest control, my pest pressures would be lower and my counts would be lower, and it would spend less time counting. It just kind of all seemed to kind of click into place that it's like, this doesn't feel like the best use of time. And I know we're not supposed to be overusing chemicals. I'm not talking about just spraying every week, every time. No. But, there certainly has to be a more efficient way than just going around and checking empty traps hours and hours and hours out of the day.
Yes, because it's basically, is your time actively bringing revenue in?
Yes.
Is your time actively bringing in dollars? Now, when we give guarantees, of course, that's one thing that will set a pest control company apart from others, is being able to give like callback guarantees or something like that.
Sure.
You got to honor those. But if you use the right products in the right places, maybe they have a longer residual than other products that you could have chosen that might be cheaper. But then that amount of time that you're able to save by not going back for a callback, or not needing to spend as many hours on location, that's how you can increase your take-home pay, is just by you're doing more business because you have more time. Whenever you go and just check, and you're just checking rodent traps constantly, I imagine that guy might have been talking about like remote cameras, watching, like having a remote camera watching a fly board, like in a fly light, a glue board, to see how much activity is actively happening. Or if it's, or then also.
So what he was kind of alluding to is like better data equals better service, in the sense that, like, using these kinds of devices, maybe you notice that every Tuesday at 2 p.m. in the morning, there's a spike in activity. Right, and and so instead of getting, a technician on site, 3 days later, or when your regular scheduled services, and he's spending, 4 or 5 hours before he kind of maybe pops open that trap that may indicate, oh, hey, there was some activity. Instead, before he even steps on site, he knows, okay, I'm consistently getting this activity spike at this time on this day. Let me go to this area because I know that's the only trap that has activity amongst all these traps. Exactly. And you're going to start looking at the routine of the facility. Oh, they have a trash truck that comes and picks up this trash receptacle that's 30 feet away from the building. And every time they do that at Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're seeing spikes in activity because there's a behavior. And so to me, that I thought that was so interesting, because it's like you become more about risk assessment and risk management as opposed to just a trap checker, right? And so you're able to, I think, to me, and when you sell the service in that way, in the sense that, like, when a company uses insurance, they pay their premium every single month, and it gets incredibly expensive, and they hope they never use it, right? But they pay that bill regularly on time, as opposed to pricing it based on the model of, well, how many traps did you check? You price it based on the model of, like you would insurance, like like a risk assessment thing, where it's like, hey, look, we're preventing you from having a recall. and whether the service is $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year for this massive facility, you're gonna feel like that's pennies on the bucket if a contamination gets in here. We got to hit the big red button on production, and now you're down, millions of dollars.
A lot more money.
Yeah, that $100,000 difference in prices between these two companies are going to seem, negligible. And I thought that was really spot on. I don't know exactly how that applies to the everyday residential customers. They're not going to necessarily have the liability like you were talking about, as far as like, not everybody's operating $1 million, beverage line or something. But, refocusing and reshifting that from, just trap checker or baseboard sprayer to, risk assessment is so important, I feel.
And that's one thing, and you mentioned the beverage line, like that, and that might not be something that the average residential customer or residential technician would need or something like that. But on a smaller scale, one of the things that we do that can absolutely increase like your take-home pay is having some kind of preventative treatments that if you have your field expertise, your knowledge, what might be coming in the next season, being able to communicate that to your customer if they trust you is a way to immediately make sales that you don't have to like convince somebody they need.
Yes.
But more, you're just saying, hey, last year I met you in August because you were dealing with fire ants. This March, let's put out a granular treatment that has a 3-month uptime in the grass. It's gonna keep fire ant mounds from building against the foundation of your house. Let's do that now, and then that way you don't have to pay me later to come out multiple times after an issue has already grown. Or on the flip side, we have residual bedbug treatments now. To plug my own company,
please.
We acquired Apprehend in August, and that's a 90-day residual on a bedbug treatment. And that's something that going to a hotel and saying, hey, if you guys have bedbugs in a hotel room, that means that you have to shut that hotel room down until the bedbug problem is checked and solved. A lot of companies have protocols that if bed bugs are detected, they have to be like have either a dog team or something run through the room after treatment, hopefully not multiple treatments. Instead of doing that, have us come by every 90 days for all the rooms. Maybe we'll do like a quarter of the rooms at a time. Having preventative treatments, that's something that uses your expertise to make a growth in a sale. It's something that you're not needing to just like convince a customer, like sell me this pen. You don't need to sell that to them. You can just offer, hey, I'm a preventative, and then that's revenue. That's also can be recurring revenue that you can bring in that way. And so having preventative treatments and good data, like you said, good data, and that can also be in the future. In the future, we'll have probably tiny little cameras on bug monitors, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, here I do see a comment that
I want to
address.
Go for it.
Yeah. So one of the viewers said that they love Apprehend. It's a game changer. That's excellent. I like that. Minus the fact that it's shelf stable. So it is shelf stable. It is shelf stable at room temperature for a year, and that's like that's where the 1 year. The 1 year like expiration date on the top really is that at room temperature it's shelf stable for a year. Now if it raises in temperature up to like the mid 80s to 90 degrees, like if it's out in your truck during a warm day or something like that, and it's not in a cooler or something like that, that will speed up that expiration date where a certain amount of spores are no longer viable. It will still work, it just will not work as well. And because those spores are denaturing slowly over time, heat speeds that process up, cold slows that process down. So when you refrigerate it, you're really just stopping its slow like efficacy decay. And then once it reaches a certain efficacy decay, we say that it's expired. But those spores are still are still work. Winter, you say winter. You said winter would be ideal. Then it can work
Sort of, yeah.
all times a year. You can carry around a little cooler to keep it at 80 or below.
So, man, this conversation has been so fun that I just looked at the clock. Almost a whole hour has zipped by, and we barely even touched anything on the Apprehend. So let's take a second. Let's just pause it right here. Let's do a little plug, because I'm a big fan of Apprehend. I've been talking about it since before you guys acquired it. I love that it's incorporating a new technology and not just traditional nerve toxins and stuff that most of the sprays are. So let's kind of pause the conversation a little bit. Give me a shameless plug. Tell me about Rockwell Labs. Tell me about Apprehend. How did you guys acquire this product? Give me the full detail. I want to know everything about it. And give the audience, and then give the audience a couple of choice applications sites. You mentioned the hotels, but I'm sure there's a plenty of other places that this would be very applicable.
And so going back to what we were talking about in terms of increasing efficiency and reducing callbacks, that's Apprehend's big plus. But you mentioned talking about the journey of it. So I came onto the team in April of 2025. We did not acquire Apprehend until August, and I didn't really know about it until like mid-July or something, and I was over the moon, because Apprehend is a product that, like you, I've been following for time beforehand. It's a fungal biopesticide that is suspended in oil, whereas these fungal spores have been used forever, and by forever I mean since the 80s, for agriculture. But once they're mixed with water, they germinate, they have a 5-day uptime. Apprehend suspends that and then makes it so that they can survive on a surface at room temperature, which bed bugs are almost always at room temperature.
Yes.
For up to 90 days. So we're extending that lifespan of that fungal product, and then also that's resistance management. There is no resistance to this fungus, and then also if there is pesticide resistant bed bugs, they get wiped out by this just the same. Now, the acquisition happened in August. It was developed by a couple, I think, Purdue entomologists, and then split off, made their own company, and that recently was brought on by us because their owner and our owner, Sissy, are friends. And that it was a business deal, match made in heaven, because it works with a lot of our other non-nerve agent pest control products like Cymexa and stuff like that. So we're basically able to now offer a non-erythroid and I don't want to say non-synthetic, because Cymexa is a silica. It is a synthetic silica, but it's a more green bedbug treatment that's completely effective and also has residual. And that's the biggest difference. The biggest difference is residual. And because whenever you leave, then bed bugs, if there's any that are still alive, are able to come out and move around. And if you have something left behind that will take care of them for up to 3 months after, then even reintroduction could not be a new callback for you, because if you have the right barriers down.
I want to not push back, but I want to tack onto that a little bit as well, because isn't there something a little bit different about the prep work? And
there sure is.
And also it being available for preventative, right? Isn't that one of these huge label differences that you don't see from any other products? So talk to me a little bit about that. If applicators, pest controllers out there need to know that, hey, this could
prep
be
work is
totally
what scares
different.
people off of doing bed bugs, man. Because you gotta go to a customer and then tell them, like, hey, with the traditional bed bug treatment. When I say a traditional bed bug treatment, I'm talking about there's a million ways to do knockdown treatments for bed bugs. There's heat, there's even fumigation, there's direct
CO2.
chemical treatments, and those are all really effective at killing 95% of the bed bugs in a house. All of them are. They're great at it, and that's awesome. But then it's that 5% that might be left over. Yes. If the treatment wasn't 100%, you didn't get all the way back into every well void, or you didn't get under every piece of clothing that's piled up on the floor. Like you said, prep work. Traditional bed bug treatments required you to get to the deepest, darkest corner of every room and be able to either apply product or hit them with a vacuum or hit them with heat. And then if there was any survivors, then those can recolonize immediately. The idea behind Apprehend is that you're putting down kind of minefield barriers around a person sleeping in the room where we know bed bugs are going to be moving around if there are any still alive. Do a knockdown treatment. We recommend using a vacuum, and then just every visible bed bug, all of the pockets of shed skins, of juveniles hiding under dead adults and eggs and everything, vacuum all that up, get the knockdown, get that 90% out, and then the 10% that might be a whole room away, either in some drapes or behind an electrical cover or something like that, as they move to a warm body, they will cross one of the barriers that you have put down. And then if they do that anytime within 3 months of you doing a proper application, then that bed bug will die. And before it's able to breed, before it's able to get into a new instar or anything like that. And so minimal customer prep work, as in a
So
lot of
huge.
times we just say move clothes away from the bed frame itself just so that we can put barriers around it, and then just make sure that you're not moving things from the floor onto the bed directly. We want things to have to walk across those barriers. That's bed frames, that's box springs. All of that can be treated and can become basically a minefield,
So
like a
I've heard
Helldiver's
of
gas minefield.
over there fighting against the Terminid. Uh,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I I've heard of people who are using handheld steamers and Apprehend, that they're getting really good results with that. For those who are interested in maybe doing a similar kind of treatment protocol, how do you optimize that? What's the best way? What which goes first?
Yeah.
How would you approach that to a customer? How would you explain that to a customer? And also, because this is a much simplified, much more easier service, is this easier to sell? Is it harder to justify the same prices? Do we feel like, is this, competitive when it comes to pricing? But is there pushback anywhere? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that, what the actual process looks like when you're going through it.
So the process in now, like I said, with the steaming, with heat treatment, with chemical direct knockdown, you can use Apprehend in concert with a chemical product that you're using as your knockdown. You just don't put a wet product on an area that you have treated with Apprehend. Like
Okay.
say if you flip a mattress and or it you shouldn't technically need to flip a mattress with our bedbug protocol. But say you want to keep your old protocol around treating the mattress itself, you flip it, you crossfire the pockets of bed bugs that are in seams or something like that, and then you use Apprehend in barriers around the box spring and the bed frame and stuff like that. That's perfectly fine. Dry
Okay.
steamers are what we recommend. Dry steamers just use a little less humidity, a little less physical moisture, and because moisture will activate Apprehend and like cause it to germinate and shorten its active life. Uh, but just killing all of the bed bugs that you can physically see, either with a steamer or then using a vacuum or
Right.
just using a vacuum, any of those protocols, Apprehend is, even though it is a standalone treatment, will take care of a bed bug infestation on its own. We, of course, just want to speed this up. And then you said something about price.
Yeah, about pricing. So, is this because a lot of times people are pricing these bedbug treatments quite expensive because of the amount of
Yes.
labor that goes into it, how much time your on-site technician has.
Mhm.
So, is this something where you can come in with a more affordable price because you're more efficient, or
Absolutely, because you're also the idea is that you're doing a lot less callbacks, and then also time spent.
time
Being
spent?
able to, instead of customers will always be somewhat of a challenge when it comes to prep work, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And then instead of spending extra time moving to every far corner of every room and then like moving furniture, flipping furniture, getting underneath them to find every crack and crevice and then vacuum out or chemical spray every pocket of bed bugs. Instead, just being able to put perimeter bands around all of those, either using painter's tape or not using painter's tape just to show where you've been, All of those projects take less time than a traditional bed bug treatment, don't require you to tent a house and get customers out for half a day. That's a
Right.
$3,000 job a lot of times when you're talking about bed bug heat treatments.
Yes.
And then you're able to charge a lot less. I've seen people charging like flea treatment price ranges for
Wow.
apprehend treatments because it can take about that much time. Bed bugs are going to be located in bedrooms typically, and then so have like selling it by bedroom. Each apprehend bottle, which the bottle is a little over $100, it's like $115, $120. That's 5 2-bedroom apartments worth of like treatment essentially. And so it's a fairly low cost per treatment for you to do. And then so that can drop the price for your customer as well. Also, if you tell a customer that you can do a bed bug job for $500 and then give them, and then not have to do a 2-week follow up, instead come back in 30 days, that's a giant difference in you getting the sale as opposed to they got a quote from the big company down the street for $2,100 that I always saw
Well,
given. And then
I see it as an opportunity for a lower cost of service for a bigger ticket sale, right? So if you go to a hotel room, they might have, or a hotel, they may have 3 floors, 30 rooms on each floor, right? And under the current model, because it's $500, $600, $700 for a chemical treatment for a single room, right?
Yep.
They're going to be reactive. They're going to only treat one room at a time on an as-needed basis.
Never use that proactively.
Right.
It can say, "Hey, we'll do it for $120
Per
we'll do it
room?
for $120 per room."
That's
and
a
that covers-
that and
that
it's
covers it for 3
preventative,
months.
and it's 90
Yep.
days. That something
Exactly.
like that may allow
Yeah.
you to put in that bigger bid for that $3,000 or $5,000 treatment because
Exactly.
you're securing the whole property as opposed to one-off little. And then, like you said, it's recurring, right? So here's an example of not racing down to the bottom of the barrel, still reducing prices for the service, but getting more out of it, getting more juice from the squeeze.
And it's scalable too. Like if you're doing a preventative service, just do a couple fans around the bed frame, and maybe a major furniture item nearby in the room, and then give a kind of a guarantee that if you guys have bed bugs show up anytime in 90 days, we'll come out and take care of it for free, because they won't. If bed bugs get brought into a hotel room through a suitcase, them making their way to that bed frame, they cross a barrier and they die. And
Right.
then you don't have a reintroduction, you don't have a colony start or anything like that. And then so for a hotel to pay $700 for a bed bug treatment per room versus spending, I don't know, $100-something per room, which that's a lot of revenue, by the way,
Yes.
for a whole hotel. But that's one booking of that hotel room.
That's one night.
In 3 months pays for that treatment, and then they don't have to worry about bed bugs.
Right.
That's
right.
That's pretty high. I do see a couple apprehend questions, if I could.
Go
if
for
I
it.
could
Take the
answer
floor,
some of those.
man. Yeah.
Matt said Penn State. That's correct. It's not Purdue. It's Penn State that developed Apprehend, and Dr. Nina Jenkins is correct.
Yes.
Dr. Jenkins and I have gotten to talk quite a bit over the last few months. She's the brains behind the operation. She's got a great British accent. Whenever she does any of these presentations, everyone's always riveted. It's great. Here's a great question. What is the best way to convince a client to being in with being the bait? So
Ooh.
bed bugs will not do much movement if there is not a warm body
Yes.
in the room.
Got to be a host.
There
Host animal.
are a couple things that we're doing here. So one of them is that there are bed bug lures that are being developed, like human mimicking lures, and then
Yeah, CO2
also
lures and
aggregate
stuff.
pheromone lures for
Yeah.
monitoring. And so both of those, we will keep you guys updated as those hit market. One of them is currently in registration in the United States.
Oh, a little insider ball there.
Say again.
Said a little insider ball right there. A little, for those who stuck around this late into the conversation, they just found out a little something on the horizon.
We'll see. But one thing that's really cool is that whenever a bed bug gets infested by Bavaria bassiana spores, they are not feeding after they've picked up that infection. So unless they picked up those spores while they were walking to the body for feeding, like feet away, then they will not feed after that. It's not their Then they will move all over a bed area near a warm body, whether they're feeding or not. So whenever we did a test we did this test 4 times. A British guy made a mock-up bedroom and then slept in it. The bed bugs that he found dead, I think only 20% of them had fed. The rest of them had not fed. So whenever you're placing this treatment down, you can tell customers, well, after they get exposed to this treatment, they will not be feeding on you. This is going to drastically reduce the amount of bites you're going to get. And then if somebody is absolutely militant that they can't have a bed bug come by and touch them again, like they need. When you tell your customers this, don't tell them that they're the bait. Let that that's something.
But don't encourage them to switch beds, right? Because that's just how you bring out infestation to another room.
You can frame it differently.
Yes.
But yeah, and then but then after you've done an Apprehend treatment, whenever those spores are picked up, biting is eliminated as well. So that's good. And then bed bugs are stealthy, but it doesn't matter how stealthy they are. They're not going to be able to dance around a well-placed barrier, and then your customer will be taken care of pretty quickly. Doing that knockdown treatment, especially if you see somebody that's got like the dinner lines of red bumps, that goes away immediately if you do a big vacuum treatment or a steam knockdown or something. Then it's down to just there's a couple of them left they need to feed in order to get their next instar, and they can't do it if there's Apprehend around.
Love
and
it.
How does it do on furniture, Sam asked. It is an oil-based product, but it comes out at such a low volume that any kind of wooden furniture, if it has any kind of sealant, you won't notice any difference. There's no staining threat or anything like that. And in terms of bigger furniture, like furniture that gets infested like by bed bugs, like recliners, couches, and stuff like that, plenty of locations for Apprehend to be applied. And then we're happy to give you guys any trainings that you're interested in. And then let's see, use a transport micron for bed bugs. I'm not familiar with that, but I will be looking it up after this, trying to get all of those active ingredients in my Rolodex.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
hey,
Marcus, thank you so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say I greatly appreciate you for coming on tonight and taking your time, and having a conversation about the industry at large, sharing a little bit about Apprehend, sharing a little bit about your personal journey, and encouraging others to follow that. Before we finish up, is there anyone that you suggest that I should talk to? Is there anyone that you think would make for a great interview that I should reach out to on LinkedIn?
Let's see. So I know you've already had on my industry buddy Chaz a couple times probably.
I didn't do him justice though. I need to re-record it because the audio got screwed up. We need to do another.
And re-record it because obviously that's the person who his hobby, his passion, and his expertise are all revolving around this industry. And so, of course, get another one with Chaz. Let's see. I don't know. I know that she is quite busy to the point that I have like kind of more of a job now because she's doing so many speaking engagements. Dr. Nina Jenkins, who developed Apprehend. She's a very interesting lady with a very good story. And then any details that I could tell you about Apprehend, she could tell you those details and why and how and who found it out. So she would also be a great choice. And then I thank you so much for having me on. And then, of course, I look forward to this year. This year's Pest World is down in Dallas. That is my neck of the woods. And then definitely expect there to be a License to Kill event that I would like to take part in hosting.
Dude, we're gonna have an LTK house for Pest World this year. So I just dropped a little treat. Come on with it. We're gonna get a big mansion, and we're gonna have a good one. So
yeah, if any of you are at any time in need of entomology advice, or if there's any Rockwell products like Entice or Apprehend that you guys are using that you have any questions on, I am Nick
It's
in
Tag
this
Nick.
chat, or Cicada spelled with an X. And please reach out. I'd love to be of use to you. I'm the technical guy. Use me.
I love it, man. Hey, we'll make sure to encourage everybody to tag in entomologists. Buddy, thank you so much for coming on. You have a blessed one, and I appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning into the License to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, stay connected.